Good morning. I've got the same candles, little star and tree and tinsel from last week. This week we talk about Epiphany. The season begins on the 6th of January, which is the end of the 12 days of Christmas, the season of Christmas. The beginning of a new season in the life of the church. It's the day on which the Orthodox Church does their gift giving. Because it's a story on this day we read of the Magi, the wise ones who come from the east to pay homage to the new king and bring gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. This wonderful little story that Matthew tells is a story that brings together a whole lot of elements from the Old Testament, the stories that the Jewish people tell, of kings coming from afar to worship a new king, bringing there's gifts, there's stars in the sky. There's a whole host of images in these stories that bring together the traditions and the expectations of the ancient people. To say this is the event, this is the manifestation, the revelation of God in human life, the messianic, the new king. This is God in flesh. That's what Matthew is trying to tell us. But the story he tells is, in my mind, quite radical. Because it's not a story of religious people, but of Gentiles, pagans, astrologers, kings or rulers or leaders or wise ones, whatever they are, from a distant land who draw upon their own wisdom, the wisdom of the stars in the sky and the heavens moving around, of in the world, seeing truth and life and wisdom in the world around them, and trusting this wisdom that says a king has been born, a new king, in a distant land. And they don't just say, oh wow, there's a new king being born over there, hey, that's good, isn't it? They act, they go out, they risk themselves on a journey. And they take with them these gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. They go in search of this newborn king to pay homage, worship, and they go. But the story is not just about pagan Gentiles with their own astrological wisdom. For when they get to this land of Jerusalem, of Israel, following their stars in the sky, they don't know where to go. And so they go to the king there, King Herod, a jealous, psychopathic tyrant. And they say, a new king's been born and it's in your land and we've come to worship, pay homage. Herod's immediately concerned, a threat to his throne, jealous. And so he says, well, where, do you know where? And they say, no, where do you think? And he says, I don't know. And he calls in the Jewish religious leaders and says, look, this is a story these fellas tell. What do you make of it? The religious people who presumably should know if God's going to do something in their world know nothing. Except they know that their own traditions from the scriptures. The scriptures that say that this Messiah will be born in Bethlehem and outback town and the line of David and so on. So they point out these pointers that they know in their mind from their scriptures. And off go these Magi, these wise ones from afar. And they find the child, who's no longer a baby, but maybe a toddler, anything up to 2 years. They go and they worship, and they offer their gifts. We're not told what happens so much, but there's a whole lot of other stories that people have dreamed up and imagined around this. Given these wise ones' names. And there's one where each of them goes into the room where the child is to offer their gift. And the gift in their hand before the child is transformed, not the glittering, fragrant, priceless gift, but it becomes something of the essence of who they are. And in this presence before the child and the angel that interprets for them, they are confronted with who they are. They're confronted with their own bitterness or need for strength and might and power. They're confronted with their own envy and jealousy or insecurity or fear. They're confronted with their need to be in control or their greed or whatever it is that grips their heart. And they're invited to hand it over. That the gift they bring is not this outside, exclusive, expensive thing, but the gift of themselves. All the good they bear, but all the pain and sorrow and hurt and anger and fear and bitterness, all that's in them before the Christ child. And in that presence of Christ, there is transformation and healing and life. And when they leave that room, they leave with a new sense of freedom. Now that's not the story Matthew tells. That's the story that people have imagined into this story and out of the life of Jesus and what he brings. And how in coming into the presence of Christ, in the presence of God, that which is sacred and holy, our eyes are transformed or our hearts are transformed. We see differently. We feel and know differently. And we find the life we yearn for. This story is one of outsiders risking a great deal to come and worship this king they know nothing about. It's the risk that people take to be vulnerable before the holiness and sacredness of God. It's the risk we take in letting go in order to be touched by the grace of God. It's a story we read before Christmas of Mary. Mary, who's visited by an angel who says you can have a child, is by the Holy Spirit, and you'll call him Jesus. And Mary says, but how? What? Where? Let it be. Who takes this risk in her life to say, let it be, God, if this is of you, let's go with it. What can go wrong? But being invited into a journey that is unknown and uncertain. The only certainty is that God calls her into this and God will be with her. And I think for me that this story of the wise ones coming is of people opening themselves up to the reality that in this life we don't have control. We'd like to, and we try to, but we can't save ourselves. We yearn for something deeper. We long for something richer. And we can't find it by ourselves. And it doesn't matter how much money we earn or how many things we own, how much power we have or how many times our names appear in the papers or on the news or in the movies or wherever. We can't find the wisdom that we seek in ourselves. It is a wisdom from beyond us. We can't control it. we can only say, let it be. Come before that which is sacred and holy, seeking the light in the darkness, following a star that is mysterious, that comes and goes, listening to the voices of those who struggle, looking for God in not in the places of assurity and certainty and security, but in the dark places of life. These wise men found, or these Magi found, Jesus not in the places of power, but in an outback place. A town that had no greatness about it. God is found in the least expected places, in the little things, in the wondrous things. And when we come face to face with the holy, the sacred, we are humbled. We are humbled before deep love, profound wonder, or the suffering of our lives. And we open our hearts to the living God, who is the only source of life for us and our world. These wise ones risked everything to follow a star or stars in the sky in the hope of finding a new king, of hope of finding something new and sacred, holy, wondrous. And when they did, they bowed and worshipped, and there was transformation. God's life was revealed in them, and they went away rejoicing. And that's the invitation of this story for you and I at the start of this new year, to walk in the light of Christ, to open our hearts and our eyes and our mind and our being to the wonder, to the love and the wisdom that's beyond.